Hello. I am Carolina, a PhD candidate at Universidad de los Andes in Colombia. Thanks a lot for being here. I will speak today about collective institutions, private property, equity, and forest protection. I will follow a little bit my notes because I am a little nervous. So, okay, to avoid any surprises, I will present an abstract of the research. In this paper, we analyze the causal impact of PRZ, which stands for Small Farmers Reserve Zones, on deforestation. PRZ is a particular local institution in Colombia. It's a hybrid between collective governance, private property lands, and control of land markets in zones of high environmental relevance. This is a novel institution, and at the international level, we only found a similar arrangement in Brazil that calls Sustainable Development Zones. We use processed satellite images and implemented a spatial regression discontinuity. The main results is that the declaration of 3 PRZ had the effect of reducing the probability of deforestation by 2% in the short term and 4% in the medium term. And the mechanism behind this are collective governance, private property, and better distribution of land. Okay. 6% of emissions annually comes from deforestation. And if some here thinks that this is a low participation, you must think if in the ecological services of forests for mitigation and adaptation also. By 2018, Colombia was the 4th country with the highest level of deforestation in the world, with an average of 100 of hectares deforested daily. And this process occurs inside the agricultural frontier. And this problem is related with land accumulation. In Colombia, we have a land Gini of 0.83, the highest of the region, but we also have high levels of informality of the land. More than 60% of the farmers don't have land titles in Colombia. And we have another drivers of deforestation, agro-industrial exploitation, and also lack of agro-sustainable practices. But outside the agricultural frontier, there is a process of expansion of the agricultural frontier to zones of special environmental management due to the lack of state capacity to control that expansion, but also because we have in Colombia, and I think that in other parts of the world, an old conservation policy that we call in Colombia parks without people. Because of that, we don't have local institutions that can work hand by hand with the state in control and monitoring the expansion of the agricultural frontier. This map here helps to illustrate the tendency of deforestation. In red, you can see the places with more deforestation in the last 20 years. And here is the arc of deforestation in the Amazonian region, but we also have a lot of deforestation inside the agricultural frontier. It is important to highlight some characteristics about the mixture of tenure systems that are present in Colombia. In Colombia, more than 50% of the land is out of the market. And that 50% of the land is more or less the same area of Spain, the country. Here in green, you can see the national parks and forest reserves, but we also have collective titles for indigenous reserves, for indigenous people in indigenous reserves, and for Afro-descendants communities. And here in yellow, we have our first 7 PR set established since 1999, and we have currently 19 PR set on request in that kind of blue. Which is my research framework and how this specific case can contribute to a broader literature. How to avoid the tragedy of commons is a major concern in economics, but more specific question is what types of local institutions help to protect forests and improve socio-ecological regimes. To avoid the tragedy of commons, we have 3 major solutions in the literature. First, we establish state property to national parks, national parks, forest reserves, also private property for conservation purposes, and also property and collective governance. But these solutions are primarily oriented to environmental zones. But what about, but we also face the tragedy of commons in agriculturally oriented lands. Here, you can see the big tension between lands for agriculture and lands to maintain our forest. So what we know from the literature about 3 mechanisms that we have in this hybrid institution. There is a consensus about collective governance and the impact of collective governance in protecting the forest. But about the second mechanism, private property and secure tenancy, there is mixed evidence. Some empirical studies find that land titles help to control deforestation because with land titles, you don't have to demonstrate tenancy to clearing the forest, yes? But others identify that with land titles, the farmers don't have the risk of losing the land anymore, so the agricultural rent expectation is higher, so they cut more trees to cultivate more land. We developed a mathematical model to explain this, but I am not going to present today. And we argue that we can prevent this last risk with this interaction with collective governance and control of land accumulation. What about equity? The literature around the last mechanism establishes that in the context of high equity, the level of cooperation are higher and the sanctions don't follow the social norm to cut trees, for example, or to implement agro-sustainable practices is also higher. There are also some empirical studies in Brazil that found that in areas with high inequity, the tendency of deforestation is higher. So our second main contribution is that this paper advances in the study of the interaction between various mechanisms previously analyzed by the literature of commons in a fragmented way. So let's go to the methodology. A spatial regression discontinuity design is used to analyze the effect of PR set. A comparison is made between pixels located inside and outside the boundaries of these zones using a bandwidth of 2 and 5 kilometers. We implemented the spatial regression discontinuity in 3 periods of times, 1 previous to the declaration and 2 after the declaration. We have this model. The only important thing here is that the foresta is a dummy, and we have 1 if there was deforestation and 0 otherwise in each pixel. We also have the interaction to allow different polynomial at each side of the frontier here in the PR set or set with this.
Could you say a little bit about what LSE implies beyond the ownership in terms of kind of regulation and control? What are the kind of the distinguishing features of these areas along the different margins you described in your literature?
But what do you mean about how?
Just a question of ownership, or are there different kind of regulatory regimes or controls that apply to what's allowed?
Do you mean around the PR set? We also have private lands around the PR set. The main difference is that inside we also have collective governance and control of accumulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, they can sell, but 1 person cannot have more than 2 or 3. Yes, there is a limit.
And there's no control on use.
There is the control of use is through the collective governance, and collective governance is based in social norms related to how to deal with trees that we have in the farm or the trees that we have in commons lands.
Okay, so the government will allocate this land to a community who has complete responsibility over its management and development.
Yes.
And how do they do that management? Do they have, like, is there an authority established?
They have a small they have small committees around diverse subjects.
And do they do like a proactive planning? Like, do they plan this is what the land will be used for, or is it like a reactive? If people want to do something, they have to ask them.
No, they have a plan.
There's like a plan.
Yes.
This is how the land will be used. We're not gonna. We're only collectively we're gonna deforest. So if 1 person had a bit of land within the government,
1 person what?
Area. So are there any sense of individual plots within it, or is the
yes. No, it's individual plots, because this is one of the main things, that they have private land, but in a context of collective governance.
And so if I, on my individual plot, want to do some deforesting, I have to go to the collective and I say, I would like to cut down some trees. And they say, no, we decided that you wouldn't.
Yes, but we have the plan and we say, okay, we are going to cut only until that.
The plan's negotiated
Yes,
between all of them.
Yes.
Okay.
What if you were a private landowner, why would you accept being inside the PRZ as limited?
If you don't accept?
So why would you want the PRZ? I mean, presumably the community has to agree to be put into PRZ, right?
Yes.
So why would you do that? Because if you wanted to accumulate more land, you're limiting your ability to do that. And
You have to go.
So the truth is that people are willingly joining these.
I will show some data to say, okay, they can control a little that kind of accumulation, but we are not pretty sure that the thing about accumulation is enacted in a perfect way. So remember this map, this is Cabrera, this is a PR set that is very, very close to the main city of the country. Which data we have? We have pixels of 30 per 30 meters with deforestation in a bandwidth of 2 and 5 kilometers. We have more than 16 millions of pixels, and we have panel information for that period of time. The main identification assumption of the model is that the treatment inside and control outside pixels in this buffer are not differentiated, but by other observable and unobservable variables prior to the declaration of each PR set. So we implemented 2 tests. First, we evaluate discontinuity in geographical variables that can be related to deforestation. As you can see in these plots, there is no discontinuity in the following variables: slope, precipitation, distance to roads, distance to main cities, and distance to rivers. And we also see that we don't have discontinuity in deforestation previous to the treatment. We cannot evaluate the behavior of other socioeconomic variables previous to the treatment, but with this last proof of no discontinuity in deforestation, we assume that inside and outside the frontier were very similar in those variables. I will skip the graph representation. And here in the first column, you can see the results of the RD for the pre-treatment. And you can see that there is no discontinuity. Here in the second column, you can see that the probability of deforestation decreases by 0.2 percentage points.
Sorry, what's the designation process?
There is a consultation between government and the local communities. And yes, we don't have a absolutely random demarcation of the border, yes? But we prove that there is no discontinuity in our main outcome.
The claimed process is that a community will go to the government and say, we'd like a PRZ, please, can you do one here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but the demarcation specific is a little bit random.
I was similarly wondering, like at the border, like how do the people decide at the margin whether to be included or not? So if there's a proposed border, maybe I'm at the edge of it and I say, well, I want to be included, or I'm at the edge of it, I don't want to be included. Like how would that work?
Yes, for the declaration of PRZ, we need a previous level of social organization to define which area we are going to have in each PRZ, but we also have the preferences of the government to define what kind of areas will be involved there.
What is this? Why do we have like these 5 million observations? What are these 5 million? What are these? Are these pixels?
Pixels
Are
are
they very
30.
small in size and, spatially, are they very spatially correlated to each other?
Yes, but we close their
Do you use some version of like only sort of standard errors to account for that?
yes.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm going to do with 1 minute, but we also have data from the agricultural national census. We have here for all the country more than 2 million of farms geolocated. So we decide to choose the farms in the same buffer, and we implement some tests to prove the mechanism that we was saying previously. And very fast, we found that inside the peer set, we have a more level of organization, of social organization. We also did an RD, and we found inside the peer set that the level of organization is higher. And also we have, we cannot do any progression with the land Gini, but we also find that land Gini inside the peer set is 0.65 versus 0.73 outside. And we are working now in an index about ecological diversity, the Shannon Index, and we also found higher level of crop diversity inside the peer set. And in the other hand, we also found a lower level of monetary income. So here you can see a big question between the tension between welfare, human welfare and ecosystem welfare. So to finish, a very local conclusion is that in the last years and after the peace agreement, the rural communities have demanded the declaration of 19 more peer set, and the government has refusing them. In contrast, they have been promoting something similar, but economic reserve zones, which are places for agribusiness with not environmental commitments. I have to say that this is changing because I don't know, but if you know, but in the last year, we have for the first time the first president from the left side. So they declared 2 more in the last year. Other conclusions more broadly are that the results underscores the significance of an hybrid institutions, an hybrid institution in mitigating the environmental impacts of frontier expansion in tropical countries. In the broader discourse surrounding conservation strategies that acknowledge community presence, and we demonstrate that the small farming can coexist with conservation objectives when supported by hybrid institutions. In Colombia, as in many countries, 70% of the agricultural production comes from small farmers. So this model can contribute to more sustainable governance and production systems, and also improves food security. This kind of arrangement can be a good model for places with a threat of deforestation, high environmental impact from agriculture, and land accumulation. Thank you very much. And if you have ideas to improve this paper, will be very welcome in the lunch. Thank you.